Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Jedd Fisch, the Washington Huskies have been extremely busy over the last couple of weeks getting this roster ready, heading into spring practice. We've been breaking down the commitments as they've come in, but haven't taken an overarching bird's eye view of what this roster looks like heading into spring practice. Want to dive into some things that we're really excited about this program heading into spring practice, that 2024 season, but also highlight some position groups that maybe we still have some questions about as well. And I'll say two things. One, Jedd Fisch came in with a very difficult task. You talk about the amount of production and key players that this program has going off to the NFL from that 2023 team, and then the timing of when Jedd Fisch has taken over this program, right? A lot of the guys in the transfer portal were already committed, enrolled at their new schools. There was not a ton of guys still uncommitted for Jedd Fisch to go out and pursue in the transfer portal. So I'll say this, we're going to have some questions about this Huskies depth chart during spring practice. Jedd Fisch in this program, they're going to get extremely aggressive after spring practice rolls around and that second portal window opens up. You're going to see some more players come to this Washington Huskies program. I want to talk about some position groups that they might go into the transfer portal and grab some guys. And again, really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Washington Husky fans. It has been a blast breaking down all the commitments for this Huskies program over the last couple of weeks. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and a program we're going to be talking a lot about as spring practice plays out, but a lot about as that transfer portal window opens back up after spring ball. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to get into the first question that I have about this Huskies program, and that is what really made this team so special in 2023. The quarterback wide receiver chemistry. I don't know if you could find an offense that had better quarterback wide receiver relationships than what we saw from this Washington Huskies program in 2023. Now, the question is, what does this unit look like heading into 2024? Starting with quarterback Will Rogers, probably the best thing Jedd Fisch has done since he's taken over this program is keeping Will Rogers with this Washington program. You talk about mitigating some growing pains in terms of a new head coach, replacing a lot of returning production, and going to a new conference. I don't know if there's a better quarterback to do so than Will Rogers, where you take a look at the numbers, over 12,000 passing yards in the SEC, a 69% completion percentage, 94 touchdowns to 28 interceptions. And on top of that, I think Will Rogers is a perfect fit in this Jedd Fisch offense. You look at what Jedd Fisch wants to do on the offensive side of the football. He wants to get the ball out quickly into his guys in space. And what does Will Rogers do best? He is extremely good at processing and gets the football out on time, accurately, allowing his wide receivers to operate after the catch. I think Will Rogers, the proven production and experience is absolutely massive. But more importantly, I think the fit in terms of what Will Rogers does well and what Jedd Fisch wants to do is really strong. Now, I'll give a quick shout out. Damon Williams, not going to be a guy that I think plays much as a true freshman. He is going to be special in my mind for this Washington program over the next couple of years. Big time Noah Fifita vibes in terms of what he does. I think that's another really good fit and a guy that I am extremely excited about in the future. Now, more of the questions that we have is, all right, this wide receiver room. You're replacing three NFL wide receivers, three of the best wide receivers that we saw in the country last year. I want to start with Jeremiah Hunter, who I think just flies under the radar because you're looking at a guy that put up some really good numbers on a team in Cal that just quite frankly was not that good, and that offense was not very dynamic. And Jeremiah Hunter still managed to go back-to-back seasons for over 700 receiving yards, a guy that can work down the field, really thrives in those contested catch situations. Going back to 2022, averaged 16.5 yards per catch. You ask me, who is the wide receiver one on this offense? I'm going to point to Jeremiah Hunter. And I think that relationship between Will Rogers and Jeremiah Hunter is going to need to be strong for Washington in 2024. The next guy I want to shout out, and as a Michigan fan, a lot of Michigan fans have very mixed feelings about Giles Jackson. I'll come out and say this. I am rooting for him. I think he is extremely talented. Loved him when he was at Michigan. It didn't quite work out. I can't wait to see what Giles Jackson looks like in this Jedd Fisch offense, where, again, what does Giles Jackson do best as a wide receiver? Is he the most polished route runner? Probably not. But is he a guy that is very electric with the football in his hands? Yes, he absolutely is. And I think that's a perfect fit. Going back to what Jedd Fisch wants to do with this offense, you want to get the football out quickly, on time, to your playmakers and let them go work after the catch. And I think Giles Jackson certainly can do that. And again, a guy that, yes, the production and staying healthy has been a problem, but a guy that's been at the college level for a long time and has played at the Big Ten level. I think you're going to see Giles Jackson be a feature in this Washington offense in 2024. Now, I think the rest of the conversation is you got a lot of young guys that you don't totally know what you have. I'll say this. I think Jedd Fisch is going to go to the transfer portal to add a few wide receivers. And I'll also say this. I think Jedd Fisch is going to be a very attractive offense for wide receivers who hit the transfer portal to come play for it. You look at Jedd Fisch and what he did at his time at Arizona, Jacob Cowing going to the NFL draft. Dorian Singer, when he was on Arizona, was one of the best receivers in the Pac-12, and T-Mac's probably going to be a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Jedd Fisch has done a phenomenal job getting his receivers involved, developing these wide receivers into NFL guys. I think when Jedd Fisch goes to look for wide receivers in the transfer portal, you got the Jedd Fisch offense, Will Rogers throwing you the football. If you're a wide receiver that hits the portal, you should be taking a look at this Washington Huskies program. It's a great offense, and there's a lot of opportunity for playing time heading into 2024. The next position I want to talk about in terms of maybe they go address in the transfer portal is probably that offensive line depth and experience. Again, you lose 2 starting tackles to the NFL draft. You lose a lot of your guys on the inside of that offensive line to the transfer portal. There is just a kind of similar conversation that we had with the wide receivers. We're just not really sure what's there. I think Jedd Fisch is going to kind of take an observation during spring practice and say, all right, who do we have? Who's going to be ready in 2024? And then what positions do we need to go and address in the portal? And I think offensive line will probably be another position. Now, Drew Azzopardi, a guy that I went back, watched a little San Diego State film. I mean, he started the last 6 games for San Diego State, only gave up 9 pressures, 6'7", 315 pounds, extremely athletic for that size. I think he got that right tackle spot figured out, but the rest of the offensive line, you're not saying guys can't step up, but I think the conversation is more around, all right, do we need to go add some veteran offensive linemen that just kind of give us that higher floor heading into 2024? That's probably another position that you're reading the spring practice notes, trying to get a feel for what Washington has. Now, going over to the defensive side of the football, I like what Jedd Fisch did early. And again, this was a really tough spot for him to be in because a lot of top guys on defense in the transfer portal were already enrolled. We're already at their next schools in the transfer portal. Now, you hold on to a guy like Sebastian Valdez, who I think is going to be a really good guy jumping up from the FCS level. You go out and get Russell Davis and Isaiah Ward, 2 guys that we broke down when they committed, 2 guys that are probably not the best run defenders as those edge rushers, but guys that are smaller, have a lot of juice off the edge, I think are going to be your pass rushers on this defense. Probably another position. I would shout out Zach DeFree too, a guy that didn't get to see in 2023, obviously being ruled ineligible, believe got to play in the postseason, but a guy that when you read the spring practice notes from last year, the fall camp notes, a guy that a lot of Washington fans are extremely excited about heading into 2024. But at the end of the day, you look at going to the Big Ten, similar conversation that we had with the offensive line. It's a line of scrimmage sport. And when you talk about that defensive line, you want a lot of bodies. You want a lot of depth on that defensive line. And I don't know if you necessarily have that heading into that 2024 year. So I think that's another position where Jedd Fisch probably goes out and addresses. Now, the back end of this defense, I'm actually a pretty big fan of. You look at that linebacker room, Carson Bruner, Alfonso, 2 guys that have played a lot of football, have played at a pretty high level, guys that you feel comfortable about trotting out week 1 of that 2024 season. And the last guy I'll mention, Brian Parham, a guy that we talked about when he committed from San Jose State, a little bit of an undersized guy, but is really good in space, doesn't miss a lot of tackles. If there's one thing you want to see this Washington defense really take that step in 2024, it's tackling in space. This was a team that missed almost, I believe they were top 10 in missed tackles last year. You want to see that cleaned up. Brian Parham doesn't miss tackles, a 7.1% missed tackle rate at San Jose State. Another guy that I'm excited about. I don't really have too many questions about the linebacker position for this program heading into 2024. And very similar. I think you feel pretty good about the back end of this defense. Maybe they add one or two players, but a guy like Prysock played really good for Arizona over the last, definitely in 2023 for Jedd Fisch. Jedd Fisch knows what he's getting with him, similar to Jordan Shaw. I like what they have back there. That's a position group that I feel pretty comfortable in. You look at this Washington team heading into spring practice, and you have some question marks. There is no secret about that. Again, you're dealing with a new coaching staff, a team that's losing a lot of production to the NFL draft and going to a new conference. There are going to inherently be a lot of questions. I think Jedd Fisch did a really good job in the short time he had to get this roster right. And again, I think you're going to see Washington get extremely aggressive after spring practice. There is going to be a lot of players that hit the transfer portal after spring practice. A lot of guys that were probably thinking about it heading into spring practice they want to go compete for jobs. Not everyone's going to win those jobs at other schools, and there are going to be opportunities to really get this roster right heading into 2024. We'll obviously be covering that when the transfer portal opens up, and going to be a team that we're talking a lot about as Washington kicks off spring practice. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. A lot of new faces, a lot of new names, and yes, we have some question marks. This one took me a while to prepare for, but it's going to be a really fun spring practice. It's going to be a really fun offseason for this Washington Huskies team. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.